Get started. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight for our first budget workshop. Hooray! And we're actually in a room that is conducive to such a conversation. So we appreciate those who are gathered here for this event. It should be very exciting, as it always is. But and I also want to appreciate our viewers who are watching live or will watch on tape delay. So we have quite a bit to cover tonight, and what we're going to do is just dive in. There is an agenda that I'd like you to look at, because I want to walk through that before we get started. Okay. I have a piece of paper under that that tells me to announce the meeting and call the roll, and then we'll work through the agenda. Ms. Cobbins?
A special session is being held on Monday, July 14th, 5 o'clock p.m., 5th floor conference room regarding a budget workshop. Immediately following the 5 p.m. budget workshop, there will be an executive session, 9th floor conference room, regarding potential land acquisition. Roll call. Walters?
Here.
Philbrook?
Here.
Walker? Townsend?
Here.
McKiernan?
Here.
Mugia?
Here.
Maddox? Kane?
Here.
Markley?
Here.
Holland.
Here. All right. The executive session is new this morning and should be brief. So that's my most optimistic statement. So looking at the agenda for tonight, we have an overview of the proposed budget. We're going to walk through a couple of items that we need to discuss. And our action tonight that we're going to ask to take is the setting of the maximum mill levy, which all of us have done before in last year's budget, and some of us several times. We'll walk through what all that means and take our time doing that. We've also laid out a preliminary calendar for our future budget work sessions. On Thursday, this coming Thursday at 5 p.m., there is no commission meeting at 7, but we do have the 5 o'clock budget session. So the 5 o'clock budget session on Thursday, we have CDBG ready to go, and really a lot of work has already been done on that with the committee. So my hope is that we can adopt that. That is something that we need to formally adopt, that proposal. The fair, we're planning on having the fair conversation. The fair board is aware of that. They plan to be present, and we'll have a comprehensive conversation about the fair. There have been 3 commissioners on a task force who have been working on that, and we'll hear a presentation from them. Also, public transportation and parks and mowing. These are all topics that the commission has brought up. On the 21st, next Monday, we do have standing committees on Monday at 5, so we'll be starting our our budget hearing at 6, and we'll cover public safety and the community survey that we have utilized and will continue to utilize. And then on the 24th, right now, we only have a chief judge, and that could fill up with additional items. And as you see, we have 2 other budget workshops that we have available for additional time. So whatever topics, if topics occur to the commission, not only tonight, but as we move through the budget, we will add those to the agenda as you direct to make sure we cover all the topics in detail. I laid these out. Mr. Bach and I went through the topics that you had laid out, and we tried to estimate how much time each topic would take and tried to couple it with other topics accordingly, but also in terms of how much lead time the staff would need to get ready for those. So the ones that they're pretty well ready for now are going up Thursday. That'll give us a week to get ready for public safety community survey, and then Judge Lamson will be coming on the 24th. So if you have ideas, tonight would be better than Thursday because that'll give our staff more lead time for preparation. But again, we'll be taking topics throughout this. All right. Any questions about the agenda or overview? All right. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bach and his team for the overview of the proposed budget.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll start with the first thing is really this. We're going to do the overview of the budget, talk about histories and transfers. Fund balance and bond rating will be different sequence that we're going through that's laid out, and then we'll get into the other discussion, the maximum mill levy and And the mayor's also talked about the future workshop agenda. So since my slide has already been advanced beyond where I am, I'll go ahead and get into the overview of the budget, and Mr. Lindsay is going to take us through that to and I know some of you have flipped through, had a chance to look at some items on it, but this is just to kind of talk about the different sections that are in there, and if there's any questions you noted or sections you didn't find that you went through, you could ask us about, and we can make sure you're able to see that or whatever as you go through it. So, Reginald, I'll turn it over to you to take us through from here.
Thank you, Doug. Our 2015 proposed budget document is made up of 11 sections. The first section is a table of contents, kind of gives you a layout of the document. The next section is a views and highlights. It contains the county administrator's message and also the presentation that was given last Thursday night on the proposed budget. The next section is the commissioner's visions, values, and goals. This includes the vision statements, value statements, and also includes an org chart, which you can see here. The next section is a community profile. It includes history, also includes the form of government that we are, also the major services that we provide, and also community characteristics. The next section is the budget overview. It's an example of how the budget process is laid out. It includes budget calendars, budget glossary.
Reginald, be sure and talk into the microphone. So.
Pull it closer.
And also a budget policy. The next section is the financial overview. It includes the notices of the public hearing and also the budget hearings. And you can see that it'll be broken out by the county and the city for those funds. It also includes a fund summary that includes all the funds and all the mill levies. This slide right here, you can see where the funds are going down the left side of the page. And you can see our 2015 budget is here for each of the funds, and also the levies are broken down right here also. Also in this section, we have each of the funds that were listed on that page. We have a breakdown of those funds showing the actuals from 2012, and then also the proposed budget in 2015. Also, we have the beginning fund balance for each of these funds. A breakout of the revenue categories, also a breakout of the expenditure categories here, and then also you see the ending fund balance from year to year, starting with the 2012 actual to what we forecast that will end with in 2015.
Am I correct that all of these documents are online?
Yes.
So if anyone clicked on our webpage, wycokck.org.
Yes, they can get to a link that will take you to this document.
That's right. So anyone who's watching online, if you would like to go, you obviously can't read that from the camera. So if you'd like to see these numbers, they are online, and you can pull up any page number and see exactly what it is we're talking about. Go ahead.
Also, the documents are available in our libraries also. The next section, it consists of financial overviews for the departments and also a overview narrative for the departments to kind of give a highlight of what the department does, also give some important issues that the departments might be experiencing. And that's what we have right here, is the department overview. This right here are the department financials. We have expenditure categories for each of the departments right here. And also we have actuals from 2013, and then we have the original budget that was set in 2014 and the amended 2014 budget, and then what we're proposing for the 2015 budget. Also on this page, we have the number of FTEs, which is full-time equivalent, that are in the department by year. Also, we have the funding mechanisms for the department by fund right here. It shows you from 2013 to all the way up to the 2015 proposed budget. So you can see with Parks and Rec, it's funded by 6 different funds: Consolidated Parks, the County General Fund, our dedicated sales tax, a special Parks and Rec fund, and then also some grants and then also Sunflower Hills. Also on this page, you can see that the Parks and Rec Department has 4 different divisions, and these divisions roll up to that department, and this kind of shows you the amount of money spent in each of these departments that was spent in 2013, and then also what we forecast out for the 2015 proposed budget and also the 2014 amended budget. The next section is the capital maintenance improvement program, which includes a policy and then also shows a schedule of the projects and the debt. Here's the policy as it looks in the book. Also part of the CMIP is equipment, and I have a spreadsheet here for the equipment, and we can see on the equipment and the project spreadsheet is kind of made up the same way, where we have departments going down the left side of the page, and also the piece of equipment or the project, and then the next column. And then also we can see the schedule of the funding as it goes out from 2014 to 2019, with 2014 to 2015 highlighted because these are what we're concentrating on in this budget. The next section would be the grant inventory, and it's broken out by federal grants, also private grants, and also state grants. You can see the total for those grants are $16 million. In the appendix, we have our financial policies, and then also our position inventory, and then also our employee paid benefits. This is a table of contents for our financial policies. You see there are 14 of them, and some of them are spread throughout the document. The budget policy is in the first part of the document, and also the CMIP policy is in another part of the document. And here are all the other policies that didn't go in those sections. Next section is the position inventory. This position inventory right here is by department. And you can see on the left side of the page, these are the departments right here, and these are the different types of positions in the department. And then these are the proposed FTEs for those departments that are funded right now. This next position inventory is by fund. Earlier I showed you a fund summary that showed you that we had different tax levy funds, also special revenue funds, enterprise funds, also grants, and also our American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. And you can see by each fund, these are the amount of FTEs, which are full-time equivalents, that are in each of these funds. This section right here breaks out the employer paid benefits, and basically kind of shows what they were in 2013, what they'll be in 2015, and then what they are in 2014 right now. And they include things like health insurance, also dental insurance, and also our CAPERS retirement plan, where we pay into those. And these are the benefits that the unified government pays for their employees. And that is, I'm finished. Anyone have any questions?
I would like to point out that at the very front, you see that we have received awards for budget preparation for the unified government. Our budget office has been recognized by their peer group for outstanding recognition. We've also received recognition for our CAFR and for the financial reporting that we do. So I think that as complex as this document is, and the many areas, I think its clarity in terms of how it's broken down is very helpful. So it's good to know not everyone out there can see our budget awards that are in here, but I think the commission needs to have our attention drawn to those. So, are there any other questions in terms of the overview?
I have a question. Also contained in this document is amendments to the 2014 budget, and I would like some information, or maybe you could tell me where to go for information as to why we're projecting a $2 million increase in expenditures for the after we've approved the 2014 budget to the amended 2014 budget.
Can you, we're going to have to be careful with this because we have our books in front of us, but we have to talk directly into the mic so they can pick it up for recording purposes.
Sure.
If you could restate that, that would be great. With authority, I appreciate it.
Also included in this document is information related to the amendment to the 2014 budget. And I noticed that we're being asked to approve a $2 million increase in expenditures, roughly, if I understand this document correctly. So at some point, I would like some information on the 2014 budget amendment that has been prepared.
We can provide you that. Was there any particular fund that you've seen the $2 million increase in?
No, I didn't go through which fund it was. I think it might have been police or public safety, but I'm sure you would know that.
We can detail out the large increases. I'm sure that's what you're looking at. Changes.
Well, and the question is whether we can avoid having to amend the budget. It would be very nice if we have $2 million in increased revenue, that would be used to replenish some of our reserves.
And just in terms of process, when we adopt, at the end of this month, when we adopt the 2015, we also adopt the 2014 amended. Is that right? And they're separate motions, separate actions, but we do them together. So whatever changes have happened in 2014, we need to cover in this budget session as well. So
I can give a brief response, possibly. On an annual basis, when we adopt our future budget, in this instance, the 2015 budget, we amend our current year budget. Our budget's prepared, I'll say 6 months in advance of what the actual budget's going to be. So we approved our 2014 budget in July of last year, and there might be items that have changed or assumptions that have changed or trends, and we try to reflect those. Now we're 12 months later in the year, and we have a better understanding of how we're going to end the year for those particular funds, and that's our rationale for amending the budget. For example, last year when we approved the budget, we did not have a stadium fund related to our subsequent purchase of Community America Ballpark. So one of our amended funds in this budget is the stadium fund. That wasn't in place last year, but we amended the budget for that purpose. But we actually, wherever revenues, or we actually look at each individual fund and how expenditures are trending as well as revenues, and we amend those funds appropriately.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I noticed specifically, police department capital equipment, the 2014 approved budget, $82,000. 2014 amended budget, $2,066,000. So that's clearly some big purchase that was not anticipated, and now we're having to incur those costs or something?
I can't speak to that particular item.
I'm not sure without looking at it. I don't know if that's pulling in the CAD system. That was a $2 million purchase, which I believe is it 2014?
It starts in 2014, and some of it will be purchased in 2015.
So I don't know
And
if
it's
in
from
the,
their Special Law Enforcement Trust Fund.
Why don't, and that's what it is on that account, but we'll go through and break out a few of these for you, that way, rather than just try to wing a few answers to it right now, or unless you want to go through the pages, but we can detail those out. But that is that one for the police department, but I think we'd be better structured if we kind of put this together and offer you a little more of a formative presentation on it so you can follow along. Thank you. I will also note, Mr. Levin noted the ballpark being on it. We carry it on our budget as an item. As we all know, we funded that from the STAR revenues that came in, so the revenue source comes from there. We don't have a separate general fund funding source that's going into it. It accounts from what comes in from the revenues that are generated that they pay into the account, and then also what's coming from those STAR bonds is how we build that budget. But we have to carry it on our books, so that does show a different area that we didn't budget for before. Okay, if there are no further questions, Mayor, we can move on to the next section. And I think that was, and this is fairly brief, but we just wanted to kind of do a recount as we started talking about going into the fund balances, the history of the transfers that we've made in order to work through each of our previous years. The Commission always asks about these when we go through our strategic planning, and you've asked about it each year as we go through the budget process, and we are keeping our accounting of this, which we are doing. So I will ask Ms. Johnser if she'll just step through these and note the amounts and what we have in each category.
Okay. The transfers or deferred payments that have occurred over the past several years, there were 3 of them. The health insurance fund, from 2009 to 2011, we deferred payments to the health insurance fund from the county general fund for a total of $4.8 million. That was over the 3-year period. I will say that in 2012, we did make an additional $200,000 payment back to the health insurance fund. And in 2014, we have a budgeted payment of $650,000 scheduled to go back to that fund. So at the end of 2014, we would still be about, we would still need to repay about $4 million of that deferred payment. The Environmental Trust Fund was another fund that we, payments for the residential trash and recycling fees come out of both the general fund and the Environmental Trust Fund, with the majority of it hitting the general fund. In 2009, we paid $4.6 million of that, the trash contract, out of the Environmental Trust Fund. At the beginning of 2009, the fund balance for the Environmental Trust Fund was just over $5 million, and that dropped the fund balance that year. We continue to pay some trash, that we do have other trash fees that are paid annually from that fund, but that over the last couple of years, that fund balance has remained at about $200,000 to $300,000. The third transfer is the water pollution control transfer that is budgeted in the 2014 budget, and that's $3.2 million that will be transferred from the Sewer System Enterprise Fund to the City General Fund. That transfer has not occurred yet.
Okay, that completes our overview on that.
I'd like to say something about it, though. One of the things that's important in this budget is it's the first one in a number of years does not include transfers from other funds. And that structural balance is important. If you notice on the county general fund, the top one, $4.8 million, it was about $1.5 million a year that was not paid into that fund. A little more than that, actually. I think that speaks to the structural imbalance that the county fund has had for a number of years. And so the efforts of the county administrator to bring our revenues up to speed with our expenses in that fund are critical to fix that structural imbalance that we basically have had since 2009, and we've simply been borrowing rather than fixing. And so this budget addresses that, and it also is not drawing down any additional money, which is a strong movement forward in terms of structural balance moving forward. So I think that's good news that we're not borrowing more money from ourselves to make this budget work. And I think we need to recognize that step in the right direction.
No, we're going to go on to the mill levy now?
We're going to fund balance.
Okay.
And now, Mr. Levin's preparation, and I will say appeal, regarding the fund balance.
Mayor, Commissioners, I guess I have a series of slides that I wanted to share or review with you, and I'm looking at, I'll say two different areas. One is fund balance and its relationship to our bond rating, but I think a related feature of that is what's been proposed in this budget, which essentially is a 2 mil reduction on the city side of the budget, and that offsets the 2 mil increase on the county budget. And so by our ability to do that, we're able to keep the net increase to a Kansas City, Kansas resident at a constant level. But there's some impacts associated with that, and that's what I wanted to briefly discuss this evening. In this graph slide, we look at our ending fund balance over time. Our low point, and that's what I'm going to start at, was 2010. We had a ending fund balance in the general fund of, this is on a budget basis, of just under $2 million, $1.8 million. And then because of actions the government took, we were able to increase that, and that was a time there was some mill levy adjustments, as well as the dedicated sales tax was passed and initiated in July of 2010, and so we were coming out of the recession. We had 2 consecutive years where we were able to strengthen our fund balance, and we ended in 2012 at $9.7 million. We had held salaries frozen during this period. The commission approved a cost of living adjustment in 2013, and we had an expected drawdown of our fund balance ending the year slightly under $6 million. This budget, with the 2014 amended and 2015 proposed, if reserves are not spent, then our ending fund balances for each of those respective years are $2.8 million 2014, $2.6 million as proposed in 2015. So you can see on the bottom line, we see the percentage that fund balance represents of expenditures. Let's see if I got this. Where, do you know where that is, Rich? Which one? Okay. There we go. No? Well, anyways, I apparently not operating that correctly. So anyways, those percentages at the bottom show where we're at. Our target goal would be somewhere closer to 10%. We're not, we're well below that level. We have a budget of the general fund of just under $194 million, and so we're cutting it tight with that level of fund balance. The impact of the 2 mil reduction on the city side is significant on what it means in terms of mill levy. That's a $1.8 million impact annually, and if we were to extend it over multiple years, and in this case I just used the example 5 years, that would be an impact over $9 million. So my caution, I guess, to the commission is once we move forward with a reduction, it's something that's in place. It certainly could be adjusted upwards in the future, but that becomes a difficult decision. But it's an ongoing, I'll say, loss of revenue to our tax base. Just to give you a little bit of a historical perspective, and Mr. Bach in his presentation highlighted these numbers, and we saw in 2009 through 2014 is what's shown here. The 2009 tax levy impacts the 2010 budget. Our 2014 proposed tax rate will be what's implemented for budget year 2015. So we've really been on I'll say a constant position from 2011 or 2012 budgets through our 2015 budget, or based on our 2014 proposed rate. We're right around that 82 mil level. And then you see two boxes on the far right of this slide. If we were to keep the mill rate constant on the city side at that 45.5 mils, our overall rate would go to that 84 mils, and that would represent a 2.4% increase. I went ahead and asked the question, how could the unified government spend $1.8 million on an annual basis? So if we retain that money on the city side and we kept those mills in place, what are some of the things we could do with it? Some options I've identified. We certainly could apply it towards our bottom line and just let it roll to fund balance. That might be a option for year one if we were to do that. Other options for, if we were to do that for 2015 or the future, would be to begin to pay back those trust funds that Debbie reviewed. We could put more money into our capital improvement program. I identified number 3, just if we applied the money for vehicles, the magnitude of vehicles that we could purchase, significant number of police cars, in this example, 4 ambulances and some additional support vehicles. We could put more money towards CMIP projects. And these are sort of one-time things that aren't ongoing. You know, we could use it towards, for example, neighborhood street resurfacing, maintenance of our buildings and parks, and even set aside some money towards ADA compliance. Last area certainly is we could use the money towards increased personnel funding. It might be filling vacant positions. We could apply it towards increased code enforcement, park vacant lot mowing. Certainly we could look at employee compensation or an employee bonus, or additional contributions to our health fund. And number 6 is some combination, not of just the above number 5, but any of the options that I alluded to. Now to bring us back to the discussion of our bond rating, these were, we had, when we did our general obligation bond sale in February of this year, the bond companies, Moody and S&P, released ratings for us. They both firms gave us rated us at a AA level. We were at the lower end of the AA level by Moody's, still a very high rating. You can see I've put some of the comments Moody's made in their rating report. They assigned us a negative outlook. And they defined what they meant by that negative outlook. It reflects the inability of the government to maintain structural balance, and simply what they're looking for are our revenues equal to or greater than our level of expenditures. They concluded if we cannot return to structural balance in the current year, reserve levels would fall and pressure our rating. They would look closely at our rating and possibly consider a downgrade. What could change the rating down? Simply the inability to have operational balance or further declines in our general fund and liquidity. You might remember we had Moody's actually present at our commission meeting on March 6th. And they have a new complex scale that they went into in detail, 4 major factors, and then under each of these factors there's a series of, I'll say, sub-ratings or indicators they look at. Finances, number 2, certainly a major part of the rating. It accounts for 30% of the rating, and the different subcategories within finance really focus on cash, liquidity, and fund balance and they do calculations as a percent of operating revenues. Standard & Poor's released their report on February 5th. Our rating was retained at the AA level. They discussed our budgetary flexibility as being a positive, and our liquidity, the cash we have in a number of our funds, as being very strong. When they talk about budgetary flexibility, they're really looking at they're saying the government has the ability and has shown the willingness to raise revenues if necessary or reduce expenditures, conversely. And so they've looked historically at the government, and they've given us, I'll say, a strong credit or summary about our budgetary flexibility. Our outlook by Standard & Poor's was stable. However, they did say they want to see us maintain, they don't want to see our revenues fall below that 8% level. And so that's really the line where that they monitor closely. I'll say that 8% level in that chart that I showed you previously, our numbers were below that 8% level. They're looking at our fund balance on our audited financial reports, which is done under the concept of generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP, and our actual numbers are a little bit higher on that basis, but our trend on the GAAP basis has followed our budgetary basis. And so if our expectation is our budgetary basis ending balances are going to decline, we'll see similar declines on our GAAP basis. Really, that was the comments I had, and I know this is it was a difficult budget to prepare and to present a balanced budget, and I think the county administrator did an excellent job at that, and the budget that was presented was able to keep the overall mill rate constant, but I think my concern in my position is, are we going to be in a strong enough position? I would feel more comfortable with a higher level of reserves, and I think it just gives us it puts us in a stronger position as we move to the future.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Walker.
Lou, looking at these two bond ratings, could you project for us what happens when the bond, I don't know if Standard & Poor's follows the exact same system. One's AA3 and one's, capital AA. But what is going to happen in terms of when we go out, as we do annually, to purchase or finance long-term debt? What would a change in those result in terms of cost?
Yeah.
Clearly it's dependent on how much long-term debt we issue, but each click down, what does it represent in terms of the change in the interest rate?
Well, I think it will vary from time to time. The current environment, we're at the AA level, and if we were to fall to the A category, which we're on borderline for Moody's, the next level down for Standard & Poor's is AA minus. So if we just had a single reduction, we would still be at the AA level. But what we've seen when we issue debt, there might be a half a point, meaning 0.5% difference between what a bond purchaser might be willing to buy debt at the AA level versus the A level. And a half point doesn't seem like much, but if you're buying, if your overall interest rate is, I'll say 3.5%, and it goes up to 4%, your borrowing cost actually might be increasing 15% or greater. So just even though it's a small, what might seem to be a small percentage increase, whether it's 0.5% or upwards to 1%, that can be significant over time in your overall borrowing costs.
Commissioner McKiernan. Well, let me say, Mr. Walker, do you have any follow-up on that?
No.
Mr. McKiernan.
Thank you.
So a couple of questions that I have related to that. How much impact would the fact that this budget has achieved a structural balance, how much does that mitigate the fact that the fund balances are going to stay rather low, and it would take an enormous increase of balance to get above that 8% level that they're talking about now. If we're at 1.4, it's going to take a huge increase to get back within that 8%. So if we made an increase of 1.8% within 1 year, how much positive effect does that have, since it's still below what they consider this threshold, this low threshold level? So structural balance and an increase in fund balance that doesn't get us back to 8, how would those two factors play in?
Well, when we meet with the rating companies, whether it's in person or on a phone call, one of the questions they always ask us, how do we project the current year to end, or what changes have we implemented for the future? And so, we have to be forthright when we respond to those questions. So if we believe our fund balance is going to decline, we'll answer it. If we believe or if we're at least hopeful that under a certain set of circumstances we can maintain it, well, that's how we'll respond. I did mention there's two different calculations on our ending fund balance. The budget one that we have to follow with the state and with this document, our budget fund balance on that basis is the level that you've seen. It is closer to the 8% on the GAAP basis, and so I think we would be certainly in a stronger position if we made the statement that we had a mill rate adjustment, even if it was just 1 mill or 2 mills, and it was our, and if we could say to the rating companies that our government elected body recognized the need to strengthen fund balance, and they took this action, and the additional money is going towards ending fund balance, that would be a positive statement to make in discussion with the rating companies.
And then how much of an impact, given the work that you all have done, Doug as well as everybody else, in achieving structural balance this year, how much positive does that play into that evaluation?
I think if we've created a budget that's balanced, but I'm going to go back to here. We're still projecting a decline from that 2013 level of 5.9 million to 2.5 million. Hopefully, and that assumes we don't spend reserves. So if we don't have any unanticipated expenses and we're able to not spend reserves, we would end at that level. If our revenues exceed what's budgeted, that 2.8 million grows. We know we're not going to spend more than we budget, because under state law we cannot. So really, I would be hopeful that we can end the year higher than that 2.8 million. It's certainly when we have our next set of rating calls closer to the end of the year or early next year, we'll have a good indication. Did we fall from 5.9 million to 2.8, or is our actual number going to be 4.5 million? And then it would be up to the rating companies to say, we were really pleased when you were able to increase your financial position 2 consecutive years. Were you able to sustain it? And that will really be their decision.
Mr. Bach.
I'll just add a little bit, and as Lou points out on this chart, what they're looking at when they look at that is really what happened 13 to 14. So, and then it'll obviously be where the CAFR is. So they're looking the 5.9 down to the 2.5. Then they're asking for steps and actions of the governing body looking forward when they start at 15. So they won't, I don't want to say they won't care what our proposed 2015 is, but they start dealing more in actuals when they're really getting down to it with is about how they're evaluating where our numbers are. And so that's where they're going to be saying 6 million. Now you're coming in around 2.5. And what steps did you take to better your situation going into 2015? And right now, the steps that we're taking are ones that don't make us any worse.
Well, there you go, because I mean, that's a positive step. Less of a negative is still a positive. So at this point.
We'll put as much positive
Yeah.
on that as we can when we have the call with them, but it's, bottom line is they will be looking at that 6 million dropping to 2.5 or 3. And hopefully we're in a better situation. We hold more money at the bottom line at the end of 14 and we're on our numbers closer to the 5.
And we demonstrate flat, at
Going forward.
worst flat, at best.
Going forward.
Okay.
If I could point out, if you'd go to the 3rd tab that says Commissioner's Vision and Values, and go to Preface 5, page 5, it says, I'll let you get there, 3rd tab, 5th page. First and second point. If you go to, this is the budget direction we gave to the staff coming out of our strategic plan in March. And this is when things were good, right? So, but I want to point these out, that this is the bind we're in because costs have gone up, fuel costs have gone up, pension fund has gone up, state revenues have been cut again dramatically. We've seen all these numbers. And our top 2 priorities that we gave to the administrator were reduce property tax rate and restore fund balances. And that's the tension we're in for the next several weeks as we figure this budget out. I don't know the answer. I don't have a crystal ball where we're going to come out. But I do think we need to remember that when we were gathering in March, in the world that we looked forward to, and this also came right after Moody's had met with us. We had our strategic plan 2 weeks after Moody's was in town and added restore fund balance to the piece. My concern here is I was on the call in January with Moody's. Spoke with them also when they were here. My concern is if we leave our fund balance 2015 proposed at 2.6 million, we're going to risk being downgraded. And the long-term cost of being downgraded, I think, exceeds the amount of money we would need to put into our fund balance in order to have that not happen. Now, at the end of the day, they make their own decision. We can take whatever actions we want, and they'll decide if they're going to grade us up or down or hold us the same. But my concern is if we have a 4th consecutive year when they've already added the negative outlook, and Lou, am I correct that this is the 2nd consecutive year of a negative outlook?
Yeah, and I guess the one thing I'll say positive, generally when they assign a negative outlook, they don't intend it to stay that way over time. They expect it's going to move one direction or the other. I think what I'll say made it a difficult decision for them. They saw 2 consecutive years, and if we would have had ended 2013 close to where we were, I don't think we actually even needed to have an increase in 2013, but if we would have ended near that level, we would have probably got that negative outlook removed. But it was the combination of what occurred in 2013 and our forecast for 2014 that they retained the negative outlook.
So one of the things that I want to encourage us on is I want to see our 2015 proposed go up. And my goal would be by around $2 million. So if we could come back and show, yes, we had 2 years down, but we're taking aggressive steps to get that fund balance back up, I think we have a better argument. We stand on firmer ground. We've restored structural integrity, we've stopped borrowing, and we've increased our fund balance. I think we stand on stronger ground to retain it. And I asked you this, Mr. Levin, last week. If the bond, if we lose our rating, can we gain it back in 2016? Can it drop for a year and then go right back up?
I think I would probably respond similar to Moody's. They want to see consecutive years of progress. And so before they might put us, we might be at the A+ category from going from the AA low level to A+. That would be one rating down. In Moody's numeric, it would be A1. And before they would move us back up to the AA level, I'm guessing they would want to at least see 2 strong years of performance before they would make that change.
So that would be my concern, is these kind of things can go down quickly and up slowly. Just like our fund balance goes down quickly, and it's slow going back up. So I don't know how we're going to do that, but I think over the next 3 weeks, I would just encourage us to look hard at these budget numbers to see how we can, as a team, bring up our fund balance. I think it would be the last thing we want to see is for our bond rating to be downgraded. I think that's a step in the wrong direction. We've made it all the way through the recession without getting downgraded, and I think to be at this point, to get downgraded now would be unacceptable. So again, I don't have the answer. I've been looking through the book. I trust you have too. But I think we need to find $2 million to drop to that bottom line before this month is over. That would be my encouragement. Yes, Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The 2.6 fund balance forecasted for 2015, does that take into consideration something we've talked about already, moving mills from the city side to the county side to help the structural balance? So that takes that into consideration?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, this is based on proposed. The administrator's proposed was to raise the county 2 and drop the city 2 to offset. That fund balance represents that. Mr. Levin's proposal was to consider keeping the city at its current level, raising the county but keeping the city at its current level, which would in effect drop $1.8 million to the bottom line or go for other things. So that's
I wouldn't hear that one again.
you have
I
something?
wouldn't hear that one again.
If his recommendation was, or his concern is, taking the mills off the city, because the proposal is to raise the county 2 to offset the loss of revenue from the state and the radio project, and to drop down the city 2 so it's a net equal. If we left the city where it was and just raised the county without dropping the city as an offset, we'd have $1.8 million more that could go to this bottom line. But that would be a net tax increase versus a net tax neutral for the majority of the community. That doesn't mean that Bonner and Edwardsville would still see the county increase, that Kansas City, Kansas residents would not. We need to make sure when we talk offset that we articulate it would not be for the entire community, and we need to be clear about that.
Thank you.
McKiernan.
I just want to say that if we do somehow find a way to increase revenues by 1.8 million, in my opinion, it needs to go to the bottom line and only to fund balance. If all the conversation we're having here is about the negative impact of the fund balances as they are, if we don't take that money and put it to fund balance, then I think we've misused it. So I think if we find a way to find that revenue, we better put it to fund balance, because otherwise that negates all the conversation we've just had.
All right, anyone else? Kane?
We're on the next subject?
Discussion regarding maximum mill levy. Mr. Bach, do you have any comments you want to make leading up to that?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I think each of you are aware, and we talked a little bit about this last Thursday. Each year we set a maximum mill levy. It's for publication purposes. It certainly is nothing that binds the governing body. What it is that you have to get it out there several weeks in advance of adopting the budget in order that you publish a rate and a maximum expenditure rate that where your budget could be adopted at. It's not a final action. Your final action is when you adopt your budget, and you can set it at any number below that rate from that standpoint. So this is something we do every year. It really sets out a number. I think we make it a bigger act than it probably really is sometimes, but it is one that you have to take an action on it at this point.
And remind us of your recommendation.
My recommendation was that as the budget that is presented to you is one that keeps our mill rate at 82 mills. So it is an increase of 2 mills on the county mill rate and a decrease on the city mill rate of 2 mills and the corresponding financials that go with that. I might let Lou note we have those pages in the document, right? What pages are they on, Lou?
Preface 40.
40?
Yeah, under, if you turn to financial overview and then turn to 40. And it's 40, 41, and then we're also, we would have a publication also for the SMID that appears on 43.
And the SMID number is based on what was recommended to us from the downtown shareholders?
Correct.
Okay,
Mr. Kane?
Lou, what is a city mill? Or is there an easier way to do this? You know, I know that there's not a comfort zone right now. So instead of doing the normal 2 mills over, I'd like to do 4 mills over just in case. And I think that would make some of the commissioners more at ease. So I'm making a motion to raise the overall mill levy by 4.
Second.
And let's reiterate that, if I could articulate that a little different. It would be to publish the
Yes.
overall mill rate.
Correct.
At 4 over, which would be 86
Yes.
instead of 82?
I think we'd probably like direction if we'd be adding 2 mills to the city side and 2 mills to the county, because the publication would need to reflect that.
2 mills to the city, 2 mills to the county.
Second again.
Now, please.
Just,
It's gonna take a little,
okay, so we're starting at the base of the 82.
Yep.
And then we would take and put 2 more on the county and 2 more on the city side. So actually, the county would be 4 over what it's currently at, because the base includes, or the 82 includes a 2 over it to start with.
Would
Is
it
that
make it
correct?
clearer if we just articulated the proposed mill rates on page 40 and 41, and then made our recommendations relative to the proposed mill rates? Because there is a separate mill
Yes.
rate proposed for city and for county and for Schmidt.
Yes, it would.
Though I think we only need to, for this consideration, we're only talking about city-county.
Correct.
I think the SMID will want to leave alone.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
So I believe what you said and Mr. Kane has said, for the city mill rate, then we would be publishing at 45.5 mils, and at the county mill rate, it'd be published at 40.5 mils.
Correct.
And that would be publishing at a total of 86 mils.
Correct.
Okay. That motion has been seconded, and again, we're setting the maximum mill levy.
Yeah, I was going to say, please reiterate
let's reiterate, we're setting the maximum mill levy that we could not go, well, we could go over. If we change our minds, we can come back and republish. That is an option. It takes an extra amount of time to do by state law, but we're certainly able to do that. But at this rate, our anticipation then would be that certainly we would not go above that, and that's simply the published rate, and we can come down. And I think all of us would hope and expect that we would come down from that. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So that is proposed. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Townsend?
Just one question, clarify, with Commissioner Kane's proposal, that would allow us to still consider Mr. Levin's option?
Yes, it would.
Okay.
Yes,
thank
it would.
you. Okay.
Mr. Kane's motion has given what I would consider maximum flexibility for consideration of all the items that are before us during this hearing time. So we're not taking things off the table before we've even talked about them. And I think that's a concern that's been expressed before. We ought to talk about them before we just eliminate them with the maximum mill levy, which is just a state statutory requirement. Okay, any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I will reiterate, 2 mills up on the city from what's published to 45.5, 2 mills up from what's recommended on the county side to 40.5, for a maximum mill levy published at 86. Roll call.
No, not yet.
We'll do this. Now, can we do both the city and county with one motion? Can we do this, can we include the SMID at no change in that motion? We'll do it separately. Okay.
Can I, it's, since there's some rounding involved, we're saying just exactly 2 mills above what appears in the document?
Yes, thank you. We do pay him to be precise, do we not?
Make this any worse.
Roll call.
No.
Aye.
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 I have a question. It's 6-1. But no, it's 7. I'm sorry.
I was about to break out the fingers.
Let's move on to the SMID. Is there a motion to adopt the SMID as published?
I move to adopt the SMID as published.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Aye.
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 It's harder than it sounds. It's harder than it sounds. Okay, that completes the maximum mill levy. Commissioner Townsend.
Okay, the follow-up question for this, in case I meet one of my constituents on the street who's saying you've raised the mill levy, when will we be making the final determination? We have just set the maximum. When will we be addressing what the final will be?
On your agenda, it shows the complete budget calendar. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more budget hearing sessions like this before we vote on the final budget. That vote will be on July 31st at 7 p.m., a budget adoption. And we would vote individually on the county mill, individually on the city mill. And there's a series of procedures we have to adopt. There's usually 8 or 9 different motions required to adopt our budget. But we will not make that decision until July 31st. And there will be another budget, public budget hearing, and actually I'm glad you raised this. On July 28th at 5 p.m., that's a Monday night, there is our final public budget hearing. By state law, that's the only one we're required to have. We used to have one in May, and now we've pushed that one back to February, which is much better because we actually have been able to consider that input in this budget in a way we were not able to in years past. So a final public hearing, 5 p.m. on July 28th, so the public's welcome to come, and people will have an opportunity to come to the microphone and share their view of what we have discussed, and then we will adopt the budget on Thursday, July 31st at 7 p.m. Thank you for clarifying that. While we're here, are there other topics that the commission would like to be sure are on the list for discussion?
I don't have a topic, but I do have a question.
Okay. Commissioner Markley, can you speak directly into the mic, please?
So as Administrator Bach knows, I go through the notebook and I mark what went up and down, and I try to figure out why it happened that way. So I'm looking at page 165 in the Community Development Neighborhood Stabilization page. And you don't have to answer this right now, I'm just curious. It shows we went up by 0.5 full-time equivalent positions, but it shows 0 for the personnel salary. So I was just curious how that happened, or how that works. 165?
165 or 155?
165. Maybe
What-
I'm it's under Community Services tab, page 165, Neighborhood Stabilization. Unless my notebook is defective, that's possible.
Oh, you're talking about a 1.5 there's between a 1 and a 1.5?
Yeah, but then if you look, it says that the proposed personnel budget is 0. So we went up 0.5 employees, but we're not going to pay them? I don't know. It's not the end of the world. I'm just curious since it's sort of an oddity. It was the only oddity I noted, so.
I know one of the things that happens there is they shift employees around to different funds, and what could have happened is the employee got shifted to another fund, and it might still be showing up in these particular funds that are paid from here. I can take a look into it, though, and find out for you.
Thanks.
Yeah. As to why it would be at 0 is probably the more perplexing point to me, that I can see the shifting of the personnels between programs, but yeah, I don't understand why it'd be 0.
Yeah, and there are several, maybe if somebody could just, next time around, when we're doing the CDBG, if somebody could just sort of walk through what some of these pages mean, because there are some other places where, the grant, it looks like the grant money went away or went down drastically, and that affected the whole fund. So it's one of the only sections where I kind of looked at it and went, these are all sort of weird. So maybe if somebody could spend a couple minutes during that CDBG segment just explaining what those sheets mean and how those big changes happen.
We'll make sure and do that.
Thank you.
I'd like to renew my request to talk about the 2014 amended budget.
Okay. So more of a
And I
comprehensive
guess what
review of
happens if we
2014.
don't amend it? What if we have to live with the 2014 budget that we approved?
Okay.
And when do those documents become meaningful? And when do we just not comply with them?
So a review of the 2014 budget amended, and if I'm going to interpret this correctly, more of a comprehensive walkthrough of the changes. Is that accurate?
Yeah, specifically, what are the impacts if we don't amend the
And what does it
2014
mean to
budget?
amend?
What does it mean to amend, and what if we don't?
What if we don't amend it?
Okay. All right. Anything else? All right. We have completed our agenda for tonight. We do have this Thursday at 5 o'clock. We'll start off with CDBG. Then we will have the discussion about the fair, and I believe the Fair Board is planning to be present for that. We have public transportation and parks and mowing, which are always,
A favorite topic, yeah.
this is my 8th budget, and we've never not talked about parks and mowing. So, in keeping with tradition.
And I just want to clarify, and the mayor said this when he talked about it at the beginning of the meeting, that I think the emphasis was that we had the committee members that were going to talk about the fair, and this is a discussion among the commissioners. That's what I've told the Fair Board, that they want to come, they want to be here in the audience and listen to the discussion. But at this point, we're not expecting a presentation from them unless I'm missing something. They came, they made their presentation in February. we have that, so if I need to instruct them differently. But right now, they're just planning to come and listen, and if we had questions, they would be here if you wanted to call them up.
All right, thank you very much. We are adjourned.
To the ninth floor.
For 15 minutes for
So moved for real estate, for potential.
potential property acquisition.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are excused to executive session on the ninth floor.